Hello, St. John family. I'm very pleased to announce that this Sunday, May 17th, we will be resuming our public celebration of Mass here at St. John's at 8 a.m. And of course, we're not going back to normal necessarily. There are still restrictions and policies we have to follow. But the one good thing about this is that everyone, whether you're able to be in the church building or if you have to be in the overflow area, regardless, everyone will be able to receive the Eucharist on Sunday. This is such a great blessing for us because really receiving the Eucharist, receiving Holy Communion is the one thing we've been missing through all of this. So praise be God that we at least get to receive the Eucharist together as a community this weekend. I'd like to use this opportunity to go through the celebration of the Mass out here at St. John's just to kind of let you know about what the differences will be. Before I do that, just a few brief notes to mention. First of all, if you're a member here at St. John's, then please do come to St. John's for Mass on Sunday. But I'd ask that you refrain from going to Mass elsewhere. Please don't go to Mass over at St. Paul's or up to St. Joseph's in Corning. And the reason is because we want to keep our numbers consistent at all three parishes. And the only way to do so is to be sure that all of the registered parishioners go to their registered parishes. So please keep that in mind. Also, another thing to keep in mind, the bishop has continued the suspension of the obligation to go to Mass on Sunday. So if you do have symptoms of COVID-19, or if you're in one of the high-risk groups, then please do stay home and know that we're praying for you out here. So just a reminder that the obligation to attend Mass on Sunday is still suspended. I'd also like to note that the priest, myself, will be entering and leaving the sanctuary from the sacristy. There's not going to be a procession up to the altar and then back. Rather, I'll be entering and exiting via the sacristy back here. And I mention this because, number one, at the beginning of Mass, we won't have adoration or confessions, just because we're trying to focus on getting Sunday Mass right. So no adoration or confessions before Mass. And then also after Mass, I won't be processing out and I won't be able to greet people after Mass. It's one of my favorite things to do is to see everybody as they come out of church. But I simply won't be able to do that. And I certainly encourage you all, as you are leaving the campus after church, not to linger and to visit because we don't want to accidentally spread the disease to others. Finally, just to mention that for the time being, we are going to keep our restrooms closed just to stay safe. It's an easy way for this disease to be transmitted. So to keep everyone safe and for everyone's well-being, we're going to keep the restrooms closed. And I certainly apologize if this is inconvenient for anyone. So with all that said, let's go ahead and look at the beginning of Mass when you actually arrive here at the church, what that's going to look like. So when you arrive at Mass on Sunday morning, this entrance, the main entrance, will be the only way to get into the church building. We're going to close off the other entrances so that we can control who's coming into the church and make sure we do appropriate distancing and keep track of our numbers. Now, we will open these doors about 30 minutes before Mass begins, about 7:30 a.m., so just to know that. Now, when you get to these doors, there will be an usher here making sure that two things happen. First of all, they're going to make sure that you're wearing a mask. If you're coming to the church building, masks will be required for the duration of Mass. So masks first, the usher will make sure you have a mask on. And then secondly, the usher will make sure that you're sanitizing your hands upon coming in. Now, we do have some hand sanitizer available, but we do ask that if you have hand sanitizer, please bring it with you and use your hand sanitizer when coming into the church. We do have some hand sanitizer available, but we want to make sure our supply lasts for as long as possible. So if you have your own and you're able to bring it, please do so and use your own hand sanitizer. You'll also notice at the entrance of the church, we will have one of these baskets available for you to place your offering. If you forget to put your offering here at the beginning of church, then don't worry, we are going to take up the collection as normal, and ushers will not only take up the collection inside the church, but will also go to the overflow area as well to take up the collection. While we're on that point, sometimes there will be a second collection, and if there is a second collection, then I'd ask that you maybe put the money you'd like to give in an envelope and mark it second collection, or write second collection in the memo of your check or something like that, just so we know that if you'd like to give to a second collection on a particular weekend, that's what you want to do with your money. We won't actually be taking up second collections during this time, so just be sure to mark the envelope or your check or whatever, just so we know where to send your offering. So, okay, so you come to the entrance of the church, you've got your mask on, you've sanitized your hands. And once you complete those steps, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to just let you come into the church and sit wherever you'd like. Again, we want to be sure to maintain proper distancing and to keep track of our numbers. And so once you get past this usher here, another usher will come and seat you in the pews. So again, we're just doing that to keep distancing and to keep track of our numbers. And speaking of numbers, the maximum occupancy for the time being will be about 50 people. And if you subtract the 10 or so individuals that are involved with the celebration of the Mass, so myself, the priest, the lector, the ushers, the musicians, sacristan, etc., then really the limit's going to be about 40 people. And so we're only going to be able to have about 40 parishioners to be seated in the actual church building. And so once we hit that 40-person limit, 50 total, then we will have to close these doors and we'll put up a sign that says something like maximum occupancy reached. And then whoever is remaining outside will have to be in the overflow area. And we'll take a look now at what the overflow area will look like. Okay, so we're outside now. And this will be where the overflow is once we reach our maximum occupancy. Now, as you probably know, this bell tower here has a big speaker in it to where you can hear what's going on inside the church out here in the parking lot and in this lawn. So if you're not able to be in the church building, then you're more than welcome to distance out here in the lawn. Bring your own chair if you'd like to sit through the duration of Mass, or you have the option of coming out in your car and listening to the Mass from your car. And I just ask that if you are going to be in the church building, to be sure to leave these parking spots here and these parking spots here available for people to listen to the Mass outside. We want these parking lots that are closer to the speaker to be available for those who want to remain in their car. So that'll be the option for overflow here at St. John's. So that will be the overflow area for people who aren't able to be in the church building on Sunday. Now, I would ask that if you are able to be in the church building on a given Sunday, first of all, give thanks to God that you're able to actually be in the church for Mass again. But then for the next weekend, I ask you to be in the overflow area that weekend so that those who are wanting to come into the church building for that next weekend can have the opportunity to do so. And so hopefully with this system where we have some people in the church building one weekend and then allow the next group to come in the following weekend, hopefully doing that will allow us to have the opportunity to be in the church building every other weekend. And so I just ask that you be mindful of that and courteous of those who are outside, to let them come into the church building the next weekend. So now let's go and actually look at what's going to happen during the Mass. Most of the previous practices we had in place before the suspension of public Masses will remain in effect during Mass. So, for example, we won't be distributing the precious blood during Mass. We won't have the sign of peace. There's just too much shaking of hands. There will be no holding hands during the Our Father, the Lord's Prayer. We won't have anybody bringing up the gifts of bread and wine and the offering. And no one will need to come forward for communion for a blessing. Only those people who actually are going to receive communion need to be in the communion line. And speaking of communion, why don't we go ahead and look at how that will work during Mass. As you can see, we have markings on the floor here to show you where to stand for communion, and there will be an usher who will dismiss each pew for communion when it comes for that time. And we're going to do our best to stagger communion so that we keep the appropriate distancing. You'll notice here that there is a yellow line, and simply come forward up to the yellow line for communion, and I'll be standing on this first wooden step. Of course, during communion, you'll be wearing your mask, as you will all throughout the Mass. And so I just want to give a brief instruction on how to receive communion with your mask on. And so I've got my mask here. So you simply, let me put it on. Come forward to receive the Eucharist up to the yellow line. Place your hands out, one on top of the other. Receive the Eucharist, and then step to the side. If you receive it on this side, you would step to this side. If you receive it on the opposite side, you go to that side. And here is where you will receive communion. Now, to receive communion, simply take the bottom hand and pick up the Eucharist. Use your free hand to remove the mask. Take the Eucharist and receive it. Replace your mask, do the sign of the cross, and then move back to your seat. Okay, so we've arrived at the end of Mass, and of course at the end the priest will move from the sanctuary to the sacristy as the final hymn is playing. Once the final hymn stops, I'd ask you to go ahead and be seated here in the church building. And then ushers will come forward and begin dismissing people by pew. The reason, of course, is we don't want a lot of people using one entrance to get out of the church building. We want to control it a little bit so that we're not overcrowding one of the entrances. So please just watch for an usher to know when it's okay to leave the church building. And please do this as efficiently as possible. We want to empty the church building as quickly as possible so we can then begin communion for those who are in the overflow area. And why don't we go ahead and explain how overflow communion will work. If you'd like to receive communion after Mass, especially those who are in the overflow area, then I ask that you come into the church through this door here. This, of course, is the door that faces the cemetery. So please don't use this main entrance and don't use the door that faces the rectory. That will be the exit for the overflow communion process. Rather, come in through this cemetery door here. An usher will be present again to make sure that you have a face mask on and that you sanitize your hands before entering into the church. And another usher will be available to direct the flow of communion, but simply you'll come down this aisle here and then come down the central aisle. And of course, you will approach the yellow line here to receive communion. I'll be standing on the top step. You'll receive communion and then turn to your left and proceed down this side of the church. And you will again exit through the rectory door, or the door that faces the rectory and the hall here. So the flow of communion will go from the cemetery side door down the middle aisle. You'll receive communion, come up this side aisle here, and exit through this door on the rectory side. Now, the preferred way to receive communion during this time will be to receive communion in the hand. We've been told that this is the safest and most sanitary way to receive the Eucharist during this time. So if you are receiving communion during Mass, you will be required to receive communion in the hand. If you'd like to receive communion on the tongue, that option will be available to you. However, you'll have to wait until all of the overflow category has finished receiving the Eucharist, and you'll be one of the very last ones to receive. And I will be sanitizing my hands after each reception on the tongue just for safety. And please do remember that once all of the overflow, once everyone has received the Eucharist, to go ahead and leave the church building and not to congregate outside so that we can prevent the spread of disease. Well, that about does it for all of our policies and procedures for resuming public Mass this Sunday here at St. John's. And I know I've given you a lot of information in this video, and it can seem very overwhelming, but all of these policies and procedures have been put into place for everyone's safety and well-being. And so we just ask that, during this time when it's the first weekend and everything is still also new, that you please be patient with us as we do our best to accommodate everyone, both in the church building as well as in the overflow area. And if you have any questions that I didn't get to or didn't answer in this video, please do put your questions in the comments section, and we'll do our best to answer your questions, especially before this Sunday when we actually have Mass for the first time here in a long time. So, and please do know that you all continue to be in my daily prayers, and we sure hope that with all of this, we're taking small steps to getting back to normal, to being able to be in the church building once again, to celebrate Mass together as a community. And so certainly encourage you to come out to church this Sunday, whether you're able to be in the church building or in the overflow area. Do know that we all will be able to receive the Eucharist. We all will be able to receive Jesus sacramentally this Sunday, and that's such a great gift and blessing. We give praise and thanks to God for that. Hope to see you all this weekend out here at St. John's. God bless you all.